campaign finance. Joining us on this and more, the Democratic Congressman from Virginia, Congressman James Walkinshaw. Welcome, live from Capitol Hill. Reaction today, what was the big picture story in your mind from the High Court?
Well, look, obviously had a series of rulings. They made the right decision, in my view, on birthright citizenship. It really honestly shouldn't even have been close. I'm shocked that there were 4 justices that couldn't read the plain text of the Constitution. With respect to the transgender bans being upheld, I just don't think across the board bans like that are right. I think they're clearly discriminatory, that local sports leagues are in the best position to determine what's fair on a case-by-case basis so all kids can participate. So I disagree with that one. On campaign finance, we've seen this court committed to allowing the billionaires to continue to try to buy elections, and this ruling will move us even further in that direction.
Now, I know you spent part of your day, as you often do, focused on the Jeffrey Epstein story, and I did want to spend part of our conversation talking about it as well, the questioning of Doug Band, a longtime aide to former President Clinton. First, a clip from the Oversight Committee Chairman, Republican James Comer, on Clinton and Doug Band, and here's Comer.
We know that Mr. Band set up several meetings between Clinton and Epstein. We know Mr. Band accompanied Mr. Clinton on several flights on Epstein's jet. Mr. Band may have said that President Clinton was on the island. Of course, President Clinton said under oath he was not. That'll obviously be a question.
What can you tell us, Congressman, about Doug Band?
Well, I was in the transcribed interview for about an hour this morning, and I heard Mr. Band respond to some of those questions about a 2022 Vanity Fair article where he talked about his interactions with Ghislaine Maxwell and Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. I think it's important to note, with respect to Bill Clinton going to the island, the flight logs, Bill Clinton's flight logs, Epstein's flight logs, show no evidence that Bill Clinton ever went to the island. There is not a single, we've deposed Bill Clinton, there's not a single piece of tangible evidence showing that he went to the island. So I think we have to conclude at this point that Bill Clinton never went to Epstein's island unless there's some evidence to the contrary. Mr. Band did maintain a relationship and a correspondence with Ghislaine Maxwell over a period of years, which is obviously troubling given the crimes that she was involved in.
Was there anything significant in terms of new information that you took away from today?
I don't think there was new information other than Doug Band, I would say, walking back his previous assertion that Bill Clinton went to Epstein's island. He said to us point blank that he didn't have any evidence that Bill Clinton went to Epstein's island.
Okay, on the Clinton to Epstein island. Okay, last thing, we've had a bunch of segments in recent weeks, and even today because of they're having primaries in Colorado, where we've talked in one way, shape, or form about the future of the Democratic Party and whether the elections in New York mean the party is moving too far to the left and all these types of things, which I'm sure you've heard as well. What would you say from where you sit in the Congress about the leadership in the Democratic Party? I know you probably expect to win the House. I know Hakeem Jeffries probably expects to be the next Speaker of the House, but there are questions being raised by some about what type of Speaker he would be, with how strong he would be, and there are certainly questions on the Senate side about Leader Schumer's future. So what about Democratic leadership and whether the leadership has the confidence of the rank-and-file members like yourself?
Well, House Democrats, we take nothing for granted with respect to November. We feel we're in a strong position and are going to run through the tape. I've watched Hakeem Jeffries operate for the 10 months that I've been in Congress. In my view, he's an exceptionally strong leader. He has united our Democratic caucus, which is diverse in every way, right? We have a broad spectrum of views and ideologies and folks from different parts of the country. He's held us together and brought us together to take on this reckless Trump administration on behalf of the American people who desperately need relief from these Trump Republican policies that are driving up costs. I'm confident he'll do precisely that as Speaker of the House starting in January.
Think some of these candidates are a little too far out of the mainstream and might make it tough to govern, even if you're in the majority?
Well, look, Democratic caucus, and I've been here as a staff member when we had large Democratic majorities. We had conservative blue dogs and very progressives from New York City and other places. And, we have common ground. We're committed to protecting and strengthening Social Security and Medicare. We're committed to bringing down costs for the American people. So we'll certainly have debates and discussions and disagreements. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to be united in standing up to this Trump administration and delivering for the American people in January.
Yeah, because I guess as people keep making this Tea Party comparison, and that was an unruly caucus, and still in some ways is for Republicans. It's been tough for speaker after speaker, and I guess that's what I was wondering whether the same will be true on the other side potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point there, we're talking prospectively about what a Democratic majority, what those challenges might be. Today, as we speak, Speaker Johnson just had to cancel all of the votes in the House this week because of a rebellion in his own ranks. So not a single ounce of progress was made on affordability for the American people because the Republicans can't govern this Congress. That's happening right now, today.
Congressman James Walkinshaw, always appreciate your time and perspective live from Washington. I'm Connell McShane, live at 5 in New York, and we have the news for all Americans.